It's the end of winter in southern Ontario, and spring and summer mushrooms haven't started popping up just yet.
There happens to be a global pandemic going on, so it's not the most exciting time. Even for ecological enthusiasts, the ecosystems can seem rather boring at this time of year, and there's less to look at, find, and identify. Despite this, there's actually still a lot out there, and I wanted to take you guys into a local forest today and show you some winter mushrooms that are really beautiful, unique, and interesting. These are a turkey tail mushroom, and they're a really beautiful mushroom. And when you're walking through the forest in winter, they're one of the most common mushrooms you're going to spot. They grow all year, but they seem to thrive in the winter, and they range a lot in color, which makes them so beautiful. Some of the ways to tell turkey tail apart from its lookalikes are it has small pores, but they are visible. So there's approximately 3 to 8 pores per millimeter, whereas in some polypores, the pores are very large or so small that you can't even see them. They're also velvety or hairy on top, and they're kind of leathery when you rip them, and there's like fibers that pull apart as you rip turkey tail mushroom. They're thin and flexible, and they're not usually white or gray. And most importantly, they're extremely zonate, so they have very distinct zones of colors. A really cool winter mushroom to spot is purple jelly disc fungi. They're really beautiful and unique looking, as you can see. They're usually purple or kind of a red wine, and they're saprobic, meaning that they grow on rotting trees, and they're decomposers, so they're important to the ecosystem. And they're actually quite common throughout North America, so definitely take a look for these ones. So this mushroom is called artist conch, and I'll explain the meaning of its name in a few moments, but first just some general identification features. It is a hard polypore that grows on dead wood, generally hardwoods and sometimes coniferous trees. It has very small pores, which are extremely close together, and you have to look kind of closely to see them. And it has zones. This one's a bit older, so they're not as distinct as some other artist conch. And the reason it's called artist conch is because if you are to scratch the surface, it bruises brown. So people take knives and tools, and they actually carve beautiful pictures into these mushrooms. As you can see here, this is one of my friend's art pieces. So these are oyster mushrooms, and the one I have here is a little bit small. They're often a lot bigger than this. They're widely cultivated and sold in a lot of grocery stores, so you might recognize this mushroom and its name, and they're very tasty. They have gills, and their gills are decurrent, which means they run down the stem of the mushroom. And when I say stem, oyster mushrooms don't actually have a very distinct stem. It's more of a very short nub, as opposed to some more traditional mushrooms with long stems growing out of the ground. They have a white spore print, and they grow in shelf-like clusters. And these mushrooms are also saprobic. So something really interesting about oyster mushrooms is they're one of the few mushrooms that are carnivorous. They actually eat nematodes, which are small worms, and it's believed that this is how they get some of their nitrogen. The last two mushrooms that I want to show you guys are called wild enoki and deadly Gallerina. And the reason I'm showing them to you at the same time is because they're considered lookalikes. So some identification features of wild enoki are that they have a reddish-orange cap, and it's generally sticky to touch. Their stem is darker, especially at the base of their stem, and it's kind of velvety. It's called a velvet foot. That's another name for the mushroom. They grow in really close, dense clusters on dead wood, and their gills are cream. It's also important to note that if you took a spore print of these mushrooms, that their spores would be white. In comparison, the deadly Gallerina also has an orangish, reddish, rusty colored cap. Their cap isn't generally sticky. Their stem doesn't have a velvety feel, and it's orange instead of dark colored. Their stem also has a very light ring on it, which isn't always present, and their gills are orange instead of cream. Deadly Gallerina grow in less dense clusters, and if you were to take a spore print of Deadly Gallerina, the spores would be a rusty orange color, So as the name suggests, deadly Gallerina are indeed deadly, and so they're very dangerous, and that makes wild enoki kind of quite a dangerous mushroom to forage since it is edible. So in this picture are both deadly Gallerina and wild enoki. So take a look at it and see if you're able to tell the difference.